back, everybody. It's episode 4 of Breaking Down Security. I'm your host, Brian Brake.
I'm Brian Betcher.
So this week, we're going to do a little bit of free form. We had a great podcast last week about vulnerability alerts and events and a little bit of incident response. And this week, I'm going to talk about how we made it into the Infosec arena, and how are ways that maybe there's different ways of getting into the Infosec field that you didn't exactly think about.
So, where do you want to go with this? You want to start out telling your story or just hypotheticals?
Number of different people tell me their stories about how they got in. Well, how did you get in? Because yours is a little more unique.
Started out in development support area. The support field is where I kind of realized systems, need to be secured and how to do it, and monitoring, DR, all this stuff. And I'm like, my company hired security professionals then. We had one on staff. I kind of got interested in it, and asked one of them, what do I need to do to get into your field? And he goes, well, start off by trying to get your CISSP. You got the background, a few years here. Start off with that. And so I did, and studied, took the test, passed it, got my certification, and took off from there.
Now you also went to college, right? So you have a degree from
right.
Austin, UT Austin.
Yeah, computer science. That got my foot in the door into IT, into the IT field, basically. Yeah.
And you just did a computer science degree, so you have a background in programming and basic underlying computer.
Yeah, technical background.
Technical, yeah. My I was very unorthodox myself, actually. If you count the military as being unorthodox, I joined the military because I was interested in the weather field, and because I lived in the middle of Missouri, and that whole area suffers from severe weather in the summer and winter, and I preferred tornadoes to blizzards. But I joined the Navy because, and you know what? This is a very, this podcast is good and it's going to be inspiring, because when I graduated high school, I had a 0.9 GPA.
Wait, what does that mean? 0.9? I've heard of 3s and 4s, right?
Yeah, no joke. I did not have enough credits to graduate high school as a senior, and I was half a credit short because I had failed a lot of things miserably, and mainly on purpose because I didn't do the homework involved. I'd pass all the tests, but when 70% of the grade is homework and you don't do your homework or you half-ass it, you don't get a passing grade in that class. So I actually had to take a night class of an elective. I think I took, current events or contemporary issues or something to graduate. And of course, I didn't have any scholarships. So my mama said, you're going to go to the military, so you can go to the Army or the Navy. And I said, well, I don't want to be holding guns and shooting bullets, so I might as well hit the Navy. And I scored high enough on my ASVAB that I had pretty much a free ride anywhere in any rate almost, except for the nuclear program. So I chose weather, and it ended up being that I was good at computers. I actually taught myself batch programming and learned how to hack basic programs. I had a bunch of games that my grandfather gave me that was like the Orb of Zot and Wizard and Star Trek and all those. And I learned how to hack those and read the code, and taught myself MS-DOS 4.0. And so I joined the Navy, and I did weather, and being in the weather field in the Navy, very heavily computerized. Cray supercomputers. We've been using the Navy weather offices, and weather commands have been on the cusp of technology for a long time. And I did more IT than computers, so I ended up getting into the N6 shop over there. And one of the things you had to do when you were in IT was make sure all the computers were secured against the DIS-SR scripts that we talked about a couple of weeks ago, and the gold disk standard for Windows. So yeah, that's how I got into security. Then when I moved to Austin, I didn't have a degree, certification, and like you, having a degree, because I started going to University of Phoenix right after I got out of the Navy, but I got my bachelor's in IT, and then that helped me get a job. So your degree and my degree both opened doors for us that further opened additional doors when we got our certifications.
Yeah.
Up until that point, it was very different until we got our degrees, and then everything was good to go.
Yeah. And today there's a debate on whether or not a degree is still the norm. A lot of people choose to just get certifications in the field that they want to go to. They have goals.
Yeah.
They say, well, man, it's going to cost me $100,000 to get a degree, and then that just gets my foot in the door in the field. Why not spend a couple of thousand on a certification and start that way? So I think that's going to be the new way to get into IT is right out of high school, start getting these certifications. It all depends on what you want to do. If you want that degree just to say you have one, or you want that foundation, yeah. But a lot of people are wanting to get right into it right away. It saves you 4 years.
Yeah, no, I kind of wish I had gone and gotten good grades in high school, so I would have been able to go to school. But I didn't. I didn't apply myself. I was pretty much a dumbass for about the first 3 years of my Navy career, too. I was just doing what was needed to get by. I loved doing weather and weather observing, but there was nothing for my, there was no marketable skills out in the real world for a weather guy, and that's when I realized IT was the way to go. System administration was mostly what I did. And I think a lot of people start that way, either on the help desk or they start with IT. You're almost always going to have a stint where you're doing some kind of support, whether it be customer support or you're supporting departments inside your company or something. But you're always going to have that help desk stint, or the hell desk stint as we call it, because I think it humbles people and helps get you well-rounded. You did that when you were working, even where you were working now. You started out kind of in our modified hell desk, right?
Hell desk? Yeah. Well, I started out doing development support, but then I worked my way into management, and I managed the help desk, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, got management back there, and yeah, the support area helps you understand, especially in development, what the consequences of your development and what the support guys have, what the hell they go through if your code's not working.
When you were doing support, it wasn't just like, I need a password reset or something. It was, this application isn't working.
Yeah.
And then you had to do some code diving, right, to make sure that everything
Basically,
was
I
working.
mean, why isn't the application working properly? Get a stack trace, or you gotta have a breadth of knowledge there. Where I was, you got to know networking, you got to know the operating system, which in our case was Linux. You got to know databases, coding to be successful where I was. And yeah, and little did I know that laid the foundation for a good step into security.
Because, security, it's vast. It's not only, what do they say? It's a mile wide and an inch deep, but it's actually a mile wide and a mile deep. I mean, you can go anywhere you want with regard to, just learning, just when we doing our CISSP, the 10 domains cover a large facet of everything in our daily work, whether it be IT or it be, whether you're in the checkbox security compliance area. Yeah, that CBK is required reading for everybody getting their CISSP. And, there's a massive amount of information online where I don't even think these days you need to go to. I don't extol the virtues of a boot camp. All right, so, yeah, you got your CBK there, and, so I don't think that there's a technical job that touches a computer that would not have any kind of security-type function to it. And, a lot of people, I didn't even realize I was doing security.
How'd you justify, your security background to get your certification? What'd you do?
Yeah, to get a CISSP, you have to demonstrate that you've done that kind of thing. And, I was sitting there. When I was in the Navy, I was doing, I had to stand watch on a watch floor, watching computers crunch numbers and things. I had to go do rounds like I was a wacky hut security guy. making sure all the doors were closed, all the safes were shut, everybody signed out all their crypto and their ComSec. And, when I got my CISSP, I was like, oh my God, how am I going to, I had to have 5 years or 4 years because I had a degree, but I was like, I need 4 years of knowledge of doing something. And then, I emailed the guy I took the class with, and he was like, I said, can I count doing rounds as physical security? And he asked me what it was about, and I said, securing safes, making sure doors were shut. And he's like, you're actually part of physical security, which is one of the 10 domains of being a CISSP. And I was like, well, holy crap, I did 4 years of that. That was, and then being in IT, you deal with access control. We did circuits on SIPRNet, which required us to have access to crypto, hardware, and software crypto.
Wow, so it was, little did you know, you had the background.
I would imagine if you did the necessary job and you're making users, you're setting GPO policy, group policy objects in Windows, or setting ACLs on a Cisco router, or don't seem like IT jobs for like a network engineer or something. You're really doing security, and it shouldn't be hard for you to translate those kinds of things into getting into the security field if you were so.
For the certification for CISSP, you need, what'd you say, 4 years plus a degree, or 5 years?
Yeah, you need like 5 years, and I believe a year can be waived if you have a degree in a particular discipline, like if it's your CS degree or electrical engineering or IT.
Yeah, I didn't know this either
like
until I started researching it. But in the support area, you're dealing with access control, you're dealing with operations security. Wow. And then also disaster recovery. I mean, if you have ever done failover or prepared for failover or done disaster recovery testing, most companies, you got to do that yearly or whatever. I had that, so,
If you're doing any kind of incident response, you're doing, business continuity. If there's a problem with, say an application or a system, and you've got to fail to a backup server or a backup database, you're implementing incident response or business continuity plans that have been put into place to allow you to do those kinds of things.
So it's pretty easy to get that background established. And if you don't have that many years, there's a lot of other certifications that don't require that type of background. Like
Sure.
the CEH. I don't have a CEH, but does that require a background in security?
I don't believe so. I'd have to look at the requirements for that, but I don't think it's as stringent as CISSP. You do have to have some kind of demonstrated knowledge, I believe. They have a questionnaire type test. I believe it might be multiple choice, and there might. I know we did take that class, but he didn't go over the test at all. He just kind of talked about different concepts. Banner grabbing, and so having that kind, you can't just walk up in there being a regular IT guy and expect to pass the CEH. Just like you can't do a CISSP, you got to do your homework. You got to set up a lab at your house. You got to kind of live, eat, breathe, and shit this stuff. I'm truly, I wasn't as much a security guy as I was when I started. Here in Austin, when I got my CISSP, because I was like, oh my God, how am I going to get 40 CPEs a year, which are continual, education units or whatever. You have to get 40 a year of, that map to your domains. And I was like, oh my God, how am I going to get these? Because it's so freaking difficult. I just do podcasts, or I go to the local ISSA chapter meetings.
You listen to podcasts about security.
I do listen to podcasts, and I make a podcast because the podcasts I listen to inspire me to teach people things.
Yep. That stuff's easy.
So,
I mean, if you can't listen to a 1 hour podcast every week or something like that, I mean, where are you, right?
Yeah, I have people that, they're like, oh my God, it's so hard to get CPEs. And I'm like, what's your commute like in the morning? Oh man, it's like a 45-minute commute, and it's awful. I can't handle the traffic or whatever. Just pop in a podcast or something, and you've got your 40 hours in almost no time. I mean, And you can listen to back episodes of podcasts, because, I started listening to the Paul Security Weekly podcast. Episode 1 was started in like late 2006,
Yep.
early 2007. And the concepts are still the same. I mean, they still talk about the same stuff. I mean, nothing has changed. Passwords still suck. Users still create simple passwords. IDSs still can be gotten around. There's scripts, Python's still around, Perl's still around. All the concepts that you have in those still exist. And, nothing really changes in regard to, being told how to scan for Nmap, for instance, or running Burp Suite for your, cross-site scripting attacks, that you're testing for. So
Let's talk about some of the tools. I mean, like Nmap. Obviously, you got to know or learn these tools that security professionals use, right? You can't just,
sure.
Say, hey, I can get hired as a security guy now. No, it's not that easy. But anybody can do it on their spare time, a little bit each day. I mean, that's all it takes.
That's right. Most security tools that are decent are free, or you can get trials of. Like Burp Suite is, you can get the free version. You don't have to pay $300 a year or whatever for like the full version. And you can do cross-site scripting attacks with Nmap. You can scan entire networks. Speaking of networks, if you have a computer at home that's powerful enough, load up VirtualBox and start some VMs of Linux. And, they have vulnerable web application servers out there that you can do, web application pen testing. They have Damn Vulnerable Linux, which also
You play around.
installs old versions of software so you can do penetration
They
testing.
have free
on that.
vulnerability scanners like OpenVAS.
That's right. We just used OpenVAS today, which is it used to be Nessus 2.0. I want to say 2.0. I could be wrong. But I know that it works pretty decently. We scanned a couple boxes at our workplace with it. I thought it did a really, really good job. And most pen testers, we just got done with a pen test with with an organization, and that's what they used to scan servers on our network. They didn't bother with the high-end stuff. And if you get Kali Linux, which is a penetration testing solution, you can learn how to use Metasploit, which is crazy.
And it's free
good
too.
Software to, and it's free too. They have a paid version which costs not as much as like Canvas and Core, but you can use the free version of Metasploit and use all the scripts involved, and there's a whole community for that. And community is important. You want to get in with the security people. You want to start following them on Twitter. A lot of them have blogs of their own where they do their own research, and they talk about things like research that they've done on certain technologies, like embedded technologies. You can go to conventions. Some of it is not so much. Even if you're in IT, find a local security organization. The local ISSA chapter here in Austin will take all kinds of people. There's plenty of people on the ISSA chapters don't have their CISSP. They're working
Yeah,
towards
there's study groups, all kinds of networking.
That's right.
You can.
That's right. The OWASP is doing the the Open Web Application Security groups are doing here in Austin. I think they did Wireshark recently, and now they're going through the Metasploit book or something like that, or maybe it's vice versa. But there's a lot of things like that in every major city. Now, if you live in a rural area, I would still go ahead and get all those free tools and learn how to use them, because the joy of learning how to do security security is well worth the effort, and it's quite lucrative if you can
find that
swing
niche.
it.
And also in college there's
right.
also groups. So look, if you're in college, look for a local group or a student
That's right.
group.
Yeah, most colleges would have
Student organizations,
Yeah, or get in with the local computer science club. Do colleges have those kinds of clubs?
I mean,
I went to University of Phoenix. I didn't go to a regular college, so
they
I
have
didn't know that.
all these student organizations.
Oh, so it's outside of?
No, it's inside. Part of the college experience, right? It's a student led, student-run organization.
Yeah, the only college experience I understand is Animal House and having to deal with University of Phoenix, which, you know, they have their niche, but if you really need a degree, you know, you get what you can from that and then move along. So we talked about some of the tools. If you're an IT professional, those are absolutely free for the majority of them, and they help you in your IT job too. You can use Netcat. Netcat's another good one. You can troubleshoot connectivity from a network perspective.
Yeah, if you download some of the Linux distros like Kali, has all those tools already installed, ready to go. Just pick one, learn about it, play with it a while, and then go to the next one. There's probably 100 of them on there.
What was your first Linux?
My first Linux, I think we did Unix in college. So my first Linux would have been Red Hat. Yeah.
Red Hat? So what was your first Unix? Were you using like
I have
the
no
BSDs
idea.
Or?
We used it to, turn in our programs, and we'd all have to turn in our programs to the same computer, and then compile them there and run them.
What was it, like an ENIAC or something?
Yeah, the punched cards. We had a week that we could write our programs on the punched cards, and then we'd insert them in. Yeah.
Shut the front door. I was just playing.
Of
you
course.
Really use punch cards.
No. I had you there though.
Come on, man. That's awesome. Okay. I actually know people. One of my IT chiefs when I was in the Navy, he worked in N6, and he was like, "Yeah, you young kids and your punk kids," because he was talking about using punch cards in the Navy and having to use tape to roll through crypto. They don't do that so much anymore, but he had to use a tape to load crypto on circuits, which I've done, and it's quite irritating if the tape is old. But my first Linux was I'd been using Windows the entire time, and I was on Diego Garcia, which is an island in the Indian Ocean, and we had a group of Air Force officers come in and install a server and some software on to test things I can't talk about. And he had, I was like, well, what's this? And he's like, it's Slackware. And I was like, what's Slackware? And he's like, it's Linux. And I was like, I never heard of it before. And this is like 2000, so we're well within the Linux world. I just didn't know what the hell Linux was. So he gave me a copy. I was like, it's free. I can have it. He's like, yeah. I just burned a copy off the internet, and I was like, oh,
the internet. What's
right.
that?
And yeah, and for those of you who don't know, because Red Hat and Ubuntu is all out there, Slackware is like the BSD of Linuxes. They strive to be, from a security standpoint, they try to be as secure as possible. They try to make sure everything is patched regularly. So I took it home and I tried to install it on a computer, but I didn't have the necessary drivers, and I only had dial-up, so I kind of let it go. And because I couldn't do anything with it, it wouldn't install with the graphics driver I had. So that was back when, in the dark days, when Linux didn't have proper graphics support. I had a terminal, but that's all I could do. My first real Unix was OpenBSD. One of my friends I worked with, his name was Steve Beck. He works for BAE Systems now. He had it on his laptop, and he was running Rat Poison as a desktop, and I was like, what the heck are you running here? Because it was just, Rat Poison is a very minimalist X Windows. And he said, oh, this is Rat Poison, I'm running OpenBSD, and I was like, cool, let me check it out. So actually OpenBSD helped me a lot for reconnaissance purposes, because, and that's going to be important if you get into information security. You're going to be doing a lot of research, a lot of research. Google will be your friend, and you should never ask anybody a question. You should just get in the habit of Googling it, because if you don't, then one of the things you learn in pen testing is that reconnaissance is key. You have to learn how to do research on the internet and find this information yourself. Like I tracked down a guy's email this morning where he was trying to keep it hidden. Found it in a resume he posted online. But anyway, so the mailing list for OpenBSD, if you don't do your homework, read their man pages, because their man pages are about as complete as you'll ever find in any Linux distro ever, they will openly yell at you or berate you And I didn't want to be one of those people that got berated, so I had to do all my homework and make sure that I knew that there was a problem.
Yeah, you're going to get
address it.
RTFM'd.
Oh, super RTFM'd or ignored, which was even worse. And then you get mad because you're like, why aren't they answering my question? And then you get some guy who will kindly tell you to go RTFM or STFU and GWBT or whatever, get back to work. So, but getting into, I guess what we're saying is that getting into information security is easy, but it's a long trudge. I've been doing this for nearly 10 years now. So. And you've been doing it just as long.
Well, I've been in the IT field, yes, but not security as a, number one, this is my job. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I guess your primary duty wasn't security.
Yeah, I was on the cusp of it for a long time until I finally just jumped in.
Yeah. That's cool. Well, it's good that they gave you the opportunity. A lot of companies would be loath to have you move from your IT job or allow you to do assistant type work. You got to have a drive if you're not in the IS field. If you're doing IT and provisioning servers and working the help desk, you need to show that initiative and say, hey, I want to learn how this works. I want to help my company do better.
Right. I mean, my secret was, it's not a secret anymore. You got to make yourself indispensable at your job, and then you can pretty much ask for whatever within reason you want. So I made myself indispensable, and then my boss comes up to me and says, what do you want? And I say, I want to be in security. And he's like, okay, give me 3 days, I'll make it happen. Boom, my title changed. That's it. You just got to make yourself indispensable. That's hard work, but it pays off. And I just jumped right into it, and I was off from there.
Well, that sounded super easy. I wasn't exactly so lucky. I was doing web content development when I was in N6 over there in San Diego, and my first foray into security period was we had a Patch Tuesday come up for our Windows boxes and also for the Solaris because we had audits. We had audits. I've had audits for 15 years now, and I had to run the patch vulnerabilities, and all I was doing was just coding HTML pages, static HTML pages to deliver weather products. So at that point I realized that it's very fast paced sometimes, and other days you're just begging for stuff to do, and over time I found that I was doing it wrong. We were doing IT security wrong because it's always a frantic pace regardless of where you're going. There's never a dull moment. There's always something going on. There's always something that needs to be secured. There's always a process that needs to be improved. There's always a vulnerability needing to be squashed. There's always a database needing secured. There's always a server needing patched, or a person that needs shooting for piggybacking through doors, or that kind of thing.
Yeah, so there you go. There's our story. Hope yours is just as successful or more. I mean, you going from college student to security or PWT to security. I mean, it can happen to anybody.
That's right. And, I guess our closing thoughts would be, don't be afraid to ask questions. Find people online who are willing to, do your homework, but, don't be afraid to ask for questions, or find a mentor. Do some networking online.
Wait, you said don't be afraid to ask questions, but then you said don't ask people. You got to look at the man pages or Google. What do you mean by don't be afraid to ask questions?
Well, okay, yeah, you're right. I was thinking more from an OS perspective when I was working with OpenBSD and learning the security concepts and everything. Try to read all the necessary material, but it's almost like that website where it tells you how do you ask the right question, or learn how to ask the right questions. You got to do all your homework. Go, okay, yeah, I was learning this program. I put this, and this in according to this example on this website, but then I ended up with this error that I don't quite understand. I did some research with that and found out that, there may be a bug in the program. What am I doing wrong? As long as you ask a well-formed question after doing
as long as you try.
I don't see any reason why.
As long as you try before you ask. Right.
That's right.
Yeah.
Try before doing. That's right. So
Don't come crying before you actually try, right?
that's right. And I see that a lot on Linux forums where it's like, oh noes, I can't figure this out. Linux sucks. I should stay on Windows. And I'm like, yeah, you probably should if you're, you know. Why doesn't my screen do this? Well, maybe you should look up the error message in Google. The one thing I've learned about that is if you've got an error message, Google the error message, because you aren't the first person to find that error message. The question has already been asked. You just
If
need
you
to
get
find
something
it.
wrong, chances are 1,000 people got that same error.
That's right. Or somebody has answered that question before to somebody who's asked the question.
So
1,000 times
when I was in
before.
college, Deja.com. I think Google bought them.
What the hell's that? Is that porn or something?
Search engine. So it collects a bunch of group forums, and Google bought them. Now it's Google Groups. That's right. It's Google Groups. So
Oh,
you go to
right.
Google Groups, search for the error, boom, people post those in forums. Google goes and crawls the net, searches all these forums, pulls all that info. Yeah.
Yep. So I guess what we're saying is, you know, do your research, ask well-formed questions. Don't be afraid to reach beyond your current job. If you're doing IT and you want to get into security, find a mentor, find somebody at your job that does security.
Interface with people in the security field. I've found that
That's right.
a lot of them are really willing to help and willing to spend time with fellow security professionals or aspiring.
Yep, and they really do.
Yeah.
A lot of them do care. A lot of them do care. So, all right. Well, I guess this was episode 4. If you have any questions or you are that IT guy out there who is trying to find a mentor perhaps, you know, me and Mr. Betcher, you get a hold of us, you know, tweet us up on the face space and, you know, say, hey, I'm just an IT weasel. I'm trying to make it in the world. I'm trying to get a career path. I've got goals. I've got, you know, hit us up on Twitter, hit us up on email or on our blog. And if we can't help you, we can find people that mailing lists that can help you out with that. So,
All right.
because that's what we're here for. So this was episode 4 of Breaking Down Security, and I guess we'll see you down the road.
Thanks for listening.